My name is Alara Vance, and for as long as I can remember, I have been the reliable one, the quiet one, the daughter who never caused a fuss. I am a landscape architect, and my life is built on patterns and stability, planning and growth. I moved to the city, while my family stayed in the comfortable suburban bubble of our hometown. My job is creative, but it is rooted in a world of order, blueprints, soil compositions, and the predictable seasons. It is a far cry from the chaos that was brewing in my own family. My older brother, Damon, is the golden child, a successful lawyer who married the perfect woman. My younger sister, Chloe, is the artist, the one who can do no wrong, always needing just a little more attention, a little more financial help, a little more praise. I was the middle child, the one who held the fort, helped with the finances, and listened to everyone's problems without ever sharing my own. I had a good salary, a cozy apartment with a small balcony garden, and a quiet life I enjoyed. I was not rich, but I was comfortable. I learned early that I could not rely on my parents for emotional support. They were too wrapped up in the dramas of Damon and Chloe. I built my own world, my own security. For years, I was the person they called when a computer needed fixing, a medical bill needed to be explained, or someone needed a place to stay for a few days. I was the family's unofficial troubleshooter, a role I accepted without question because that was what family did, right? I never asked for anything in return. I made their lives easier. I never realized I was making it too easy for them to forget I had a life of my own. The planning for the 30th anniversary party started months in advance. Chloe was put in charge, of course. Our mother, Vivian, treated it like a state function. I offered to help as I always did. "Oh, no, sweetie," my mother had said, waving a dismissive hand. "It is all under control. Chloe has a fantastic vision for it." I felt a familiar pang of disappointment, but I pushed it aside. "Let me know if you need anything, a venue, a caterer, anything," I insisted, thinking my professional connections could be useful. "We are fine, Alara. We have it handled." My father, Gerald, just nodded, not making eye contact, his focus already on the television. Weeks later, the date was set. I started getting texts from relatives. "So excited to see you at the party. Are you bringing a date?" I was confused. I had not gotten an invitation. When I finally called my mother, the conversation was clipped. "It is a small party, Alara. Very small. Just us. Your father and I decided to keep it to a minimum." "But Mom..." "I am your daughter," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "I know, sweetie, but we just do not have the room. We do not want it to be a huge, stressful affair. You understand, do you not?" I did not. A week later, my brother called to check in, and in a moment of vulnerability, I told him I was hurt. "Mom and Dad just want to be a nice, quiet evening," he had said, his tone patronizing. "Do not make a big deal out of it. You know how Chloe gets when things are not perfect." It was a veiled accusation. I was the one who would cause a scene. I was the one who would make it about me. The day of the party arrived. I went through the motions, tending to my small garden, trying to act like it was just another Saturday. I tried to read. I tried to watch a movie, but the silence in my apartment was deafening. I felt like a ghost in my own life. My phone was quiet. No one texted, no one called to see how I was doing. It was as if I had been erased. I started to feel sorry for myself, the familiar sting of rejection settling in my chest. I was just about to go for a long walk when my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. She was tagged in a post by my mother. The photo was up. She had posted it. It was not a backyard gathering. It was a grand ballroom, dripping with chandeliers. My mother was in a stunning, floor-length gown. My father was beaming in a tuxedo. Damon and his wife, Sarah, were impeccably dressed. Chloe, in a designer dress I had seen in a magazine, was beaming at the camera. The caption "Family First" felt like a weapon. My stomach plummeted. I scrolled through the comments, my heart pounding in my ears. There it was. The question that broke everything. "Where's Alara?" Posted by my cousin Mia. I watched as the comment section erupted. Someone else asked, "Why isn't Alara there?" Another person replied, "I thought it was a family event." The silence from my mother, from Chloe, was damning. Then, After what felt like an eternity, a reply appeared. It was from Chloe. She had simply written, it was a private celebration. That was it. No explanation. No, Alara couldn't make it. No, we love her and miss her. Just a cold, dismissive statement that confirmed what I had feared all along. I was being publicly written out of the family narrative. I stared at my phone for what felt like hours. I could not breathe. The pain was not just about missing a party. It was about the deliberate, calculated nature of the exclusion. They had planned this. They had told me it was small to keep me away, while secretly organizing a lavish event. They had posted photos knowing full well I would see them, knowing full well the questions that would follow. It was a message. And the message was clear. You are not one of us. I wanted to call them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask them how they could do this. But I knew what would happen. I would be accused of being dramatic, of making it all about me, of being jealous of Chloe. I would be the villain in their story once again. So, I did something I had never done before. I put my phone down. I took a deep breath. And I started to think. About 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing. It was Damon. I almost did not answer, but something compelled me to pick up. His voice was strained. Alara, I am so sorry. I did not know what they were going to do. He sounded genuinely upset, which was a first. I stayed silent, letting him talk. Mom and Chloe planned the whole thing. They told me you were okay with it. They said you had work and could not make it. I did not know they told you it was a backyard thing. I feel terrible. A part of me wanted to believe him, but I had been burned too many times. Damon always took the path of least resistance. He always sided with whoever was loudest, and that was usually Chloe. I simply told him I had to go, and ended the call. It was the first time I had ever hung up on my brother, and strangely, it felt liberating. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mother. It was not an apology. It was an accusation. Your father and I are very disappointed in you. Your reaction to the party has caused a lot of unnecessary stress. You should have just been happy for us. I read the message 3 times, trying to process the audacity. They had lied to me, excluded me, and now they were disappointed in me. I did not respond. I could not. I knew that any response I gave would be twisted and used against me. My silence seemed to infuriate them more. A few hours later, Chloe called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a rambling, tearful message, accusing me of trying to ruin her relationship with our parents, of being bitter and jealous because she had a better life. She said I had always been resentful of her success, and that this was just my latest attempt to make everything about myself. I had never heard anything so absurd. I had spent my entire life supporting her, cheering her on, and bailing her out of trouble. And this was how she repaid me. The calls kept coming. My father called, his voice low and gruff. He did not yell, which was somehow worse. He simply said, "Your mother is very upset. You need to call her and fix this." I asked him, "Fix what, Dad? What did I do wrong?" There was a long pause. He said, "You should have just let it go. You know how your mother gets." He was asking me to apologize for being hurt. He was asking me to swallow my pain to keep the peace. It was the same pattern I had followed my entire life. And for the first time, I realized I was done. I could not do it anymore. I could not keep being the one who absorbed all the family's dysfunction while they went on living their perfect lives. I decided to take a break from my phone. I needed to think. I needed to process everything without the constant barrage of gaslighting messages. I went for a long walk through the city, watching the people go about their lives, living their own dramas, their own joys. I passed by a small park with a beautiful garden, and it reminded me why I loved my job. Creating beauty from chaos. Bringing order to the wild. I could do that. I could rebuild my own life. I just had to let go of the fantasy that my family would ever change. Later that evening, I received an email. It was from my mother, but it was not addressed just to me. It was a group email to Damon, Chloe, and myself. The subject line read "Family Meeting." The email was coldly formal, asking us all to come to the house the following weekend to discuss the situation. It was an ambush. I knew it. They wanted to gang up on me. to force me into submission in person. My immediate instinct was to make an excuse, to avoid the confrontation. But then I realized that was exactly what they expected me to do. For once, I decided to do the unexpected. I replied to the email, copying everyone. I wrote, "I will be there." I spent the next few days preparing myself. I knew I could not go into that meeting as the old Alara, the quiet, compliant daughter. I had to be different. I had to speak my truth, even if my voice shook. I rehearsed what I wanted to say, but I also knew I could not plan for every twist. The family dynamics were too unpredictable. The day arrived, and I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach as I drove to my parents' house. It was the same colonial-style home I had grown up in, but it suddenly looked foreign, unwelcoming. I parked my car and took a deep breath. I was the first to arrive. My mother opened the door, a tight smile on her face. "Alara, thank you for coming." She gestured for me to sit in the living room. It was the formal living room, the one we were never allowed to play in as children. It felt like a courtroom. Damon and Sarah arrived soon after, followed by Chloe, who walked in with an air of dramatic suffering, her eyes red and puffy, as if she had been crying for days. My father walked in last, carrying a cup of coffee. He sat in his armchair, the king surveying his court. The tension was so thick I could almost taste it. My mother began by saying, "We are all here to address the unfortunate events surrounding our anniversary." She spoke as if she were a mediator, not the architect of the disaster. Chloe immediately burst into tears. "I am just so hurt. Alara has always been so cold and distant. She never tries to connect with us. She made our beautiful party all about her." I sat there, watching the performance, my hands clenched in my lap. I did not speak. I let her finish. Then Damon spoke up, surprising everyone. "Actually, Chloe," he said quietly, "I think we need to listen to Alara. We have all been unfair to her. I have been unfair to her." The room went silent. My mother looked shocked. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. For a moment, I thought I had an ally. It was not to be. Damon quickly backtracked under our mother's withering glare. "But, Alara, maybe you could have handled it better. Maybe you could have called and talked to Mom privately instead of causing all this drama online." The betrayal was a knife to my heart. I realized then that I would never get what I needed from them. They were all too invested in the roles they played. Damon was the peacekeeper, Chloe was the victim, and my parents were the benevolent rulers. There was no room for me to be anything other than the compliant subject. I stood up. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I looked at each of them, one by one. I said, "I did not cause drama online." Chloe posted the photo. I did not ask for an explanation. I simply saw it. And the truth is, you all knew what you were doing. You chose to exclude me. You lied to me. And instead of being sorry, you are all blaming me for being hurt. My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand. I continued. "I've spent my entire life being the one who fixes things, who helps out, who stays quiet. And where has it gotten me? It has gotten me a seat at a table where I am not wanted." I looked at Chloe. "You are not the victim here. You are the one who posted that photo. You are the one who was publicly humiliating me. You did it on purpose, and we both know it." I looked at my father. "Dad, I have always respected you, but you have let this happen. You have let your wife and your youngest daughter treat me like an outsider. And that is your failure, not mine." I looked at my mother. "And you, Mom. You are the one who taught me that family is everything. But apparently, family does not include me unless I am useful to you." The silence was absolute. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth. It was not pretty. It was not comfortable, but it was honest. My mother's face was pale. Chloe was staring at me, her mouth open. My father looked like he had aged 10 years. I did not wait for a response. I did not need one. I said, "I am going to leave now. I am going to go home and live my life. I am not going to be the person you call when you need money or help. I am not going to be the daughter you pretend does not exist. I am done." I walked out of the living room, out of the front door, and into my car. I was shaking. I was crying, but I was also free. I drove home, the city lights blurring through my tears. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but I knew it was the most necessary. The weeks following that confrontation were surreal. My phone was silent for the first few days. Then the messages started trickling in. They were not apologies. They were explanations. My mother sent a long email about how she had not meant to hurt me, how Chloe had just wanted a perfect event, how I had misunderstood everything. My father called once, leaving a voicemail saying, "I hope you are okay." That was it. Nothing more. Damon texted me a few times, trying to act like nothing had happened, asking me to lunch. I told him I needed space. Chloe posted passive-aggressive quotes on social media about toxic family members and cutting out negativity. It was all so predictable. They were the ones who had done the cutting. They had just expected me to lie down and take it. And when I refused, they could not handle it. I threw myself into my work. I took on new projects, designing gardens for clients who appreciated my vision. I started a small side business, creating miniature terrariums and selling them online. It was therapeutic, creating tiny, controlled worlds. I started going for long runs in the morning, pushing my body to its limits. The physical exhaustion helped quiet my mind. I started spending more time with friends I had neglected over the years, people who had never been part of my family drama, who saw me as Alara, not as the forgotten daughter. I started to rebuild my life, brick by brick. It was slow, painful work, but it was honest work. And every day I felt a little stronger. About a month later, I received a package in the mail. It was from my mother. I opened it cautiously, expecting another letter, another attempt to manipulate me. Instead, it was a photo album. I opened the first page, and my heart broke all over again. It was filled with photos of me. Photos from my childhood, my first day of school, my college graduation, my first apartment. There were photos I had never even seen before. Tucked in the back was a note. It was written in my father's handwriting. It said, "We are proud of you, Alara. We have always been proud of you. We just did not know how to show it. We made a terrible mistake." I was stunned. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received. But it was also confusing. Why now? Why after I had walked away? I called my father that night. He answered on the first ring. We talked for a long time. He admitted that my mother and Chloe had been wrong. He admitted that he had been weak, that he had gone along with things to avoid conflict. He said the photo album was his idea. He had found the pictures and put it together himself, hoping it would show me that I was loved. He told me that my mother and Chloe were not ready to apologize, but he wanted me to know that he was. He said, "I do not blame you for walking away. I would have done the same thing. But I want you to know, you will always have a place here, even if you do not want one." It was the most vulnerable I had ever heard my father. I cried after the call ended, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. I decided to maintain my distance. I was not ready to walk back into that house. But I started talking to my father regularly. We would have short phone calls every few days, talking about work, about the weather, about my garden. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. I did not hear from my mother or Chloe. And honestly, I did not want to. I was not ready. I was not sure if I would ever be ready. But I was learning that forgiveness was a personal journey. It was not about making them feel better. It was about making me feel whole. Around this time, I met someone. His name was Adrian. He was a city planner, and we met at a community meeting about green spaces. We started talking about my work, and he was genuinely interested. He was not just making conversation. He asked thoughtful questions about soil erosion and indigenous plant species. It was the most refreshing conversation I had had in years. We started going for coffee, then for dinner. He was calm and steady, the kind of person who listened more than he talked. He had his own family dramas, but he did not let them define him. He told me, "Family is important, but so is your own peace. You have to find a balance." It was a simple sentiment, but it was exactly what I needed to hear. 6 months passed. I had built a new life. I had new friends, a growing business, and a relationship that felt healthy and supportive. I had stopped checking Chloe's social media. I had stopped waiting for my mother's call. I was living my life on my own terms. Then one Sunday afternoon, I got a call from my father. He said, "Your mother has been in an accident. She is okay, but she is in the hospital. She is asking for you." I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Fear, anger, grief. But mostly, I felt a deep, overwhelming sense of responsibility. I had walked away from the drama, but I could not walk away from this. I told my father I would be there. I walked into the hospital room and saw my mother lying in the bed. She looked smaller, older. Her arm was in a sling. She had broken it in a fall. Chloe was sitting beside her, looking tired and worn out. The moment my mother saw me, she started to cry. "Alara, I am so sorry. I am so sorry for everything." I heard the words, and I did not know if they were real or if they were just a product of pain medication. But something in her eyes told me they were genuine. Chloe looked up at me, her face full of shame. She did not speak, but she did not need to. I walked over to the bed and took my mother's hand. I said, "It is okay, Mom. I am here." And in that moment, I realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting. It was about choosing not to let the past control your future. I stayed with her for hours. We talked. Not about the party, not about the accusations. We talked about my job, my garden, Adrian. She listened. She asked questions. It was the most normal interaction we had ever had. Before I left, she said, "I know I do not deserve it, but I hope you can forgive me." I squeezed her hand and said, "I am working on it. I am working on forgiving all of you." It was not a full reconciliation, but it was a beginning. I knew the healing would take time. Years, maybe. But for the first time, I had hope. Chloe and I had a conversation a few days later. It was awkward and painful, but she finally admitted that she had been jealous of me. She thought I was the responsible one, the one who had it all together, the one who was always praised for being sensible. She said she had tried to tear me down to make herself feel better. I realized then that she was just as broken as the rest of us. Our parents had pitted us against each other, even if they did not mean to. We were not enemies. We were just casualties of a family that did not know how to love without conditions. We did not become best friends overnight, but we started to build a new relationship, a more honest one. It took time, but my family started to change. My father became more vocal. He started speaking up when my mother or Chloe were being unreasonable. My mother started going to therapy, something she had always mocked. Chloe stopped her dramatic social media posts and started focusing on her art for real. It was not a perfect transformation. There were still fights, still tense moments, but the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the doormat. I was a person with boundaries, with her own life, with her own power. And they respected that, even if they did not always like it. Looking back, the photo was a gift. It was a painful, cruel gift, but a gift nonetheless. It showed me the truth. It showed me that the family I thought I had was a fantasy. But it also showed me that I was strong enough to walk away and rebuild something better. I did not lose my family. I found a new way to be in a family. I found a way to love them without losing myself. I built a garden of my own, a beautiful, messy, imperfect garden. And it was mine. There are still moments of sadness. I still grieve for the family I wish I had. I still occasionally feel the sting of not being invited, of being excluded. But that pain is no longer in control. It is just a part of my history. I do not let it define my present. I have learned that family is not just about blood. It is about mutual respect, honesty, and care. It is about showing up for each other, even when it is hard. And it is about knowing when to walk away to protect your own peace. I wish I had known that years ago. But I know it now, and that is what matters. I continued volunteering with a community garden project, teaching children how to grow their own food. It was a small act of kindness, a way to give back to a world that had given me so much. Every time I saw a child's face light up as they pulled a carrot out of the soil, I felt a sense of purpose. I was building something. I was contributing to something bigger than myself. It was a feeling I had never gotten from my family, and I realized I did not need it from them. I could find it anywhere. I could find it within myself. Adrian proposed to me a year later. It was a quiet evening in my garden. He got down on one knee and said, "You have built this beautiful world for yourself. I would be honored to be a part of it." I said yes without hesitation. We had a small wedding, just a few close friends, and my father. My mother and Chloe were invited, but I knew it was a test. They passed. They came, they were supportive, and they did not make it about themselves. It was not a perfect day, but it was an honest one. And that was all I had ever wanted. I still talk to my mother and Chloe. It is not always easy. There are still old patterns that creep up. But I am better at recognizing them now. I am better at calling them out. I have learned to use my voice. I have learned that silence is not always golden. Sometimes it is just fear. And I refuse to be afraid anymore. I refuse to be silenced. I have too much to say. I have too much to live for. The photo that started all of this, the photo of the anniversary party, I have it saved on my phone. I look at it sometimes, not with anger, but with a strange sense of gratitude. It was the moment everything changed. It was the moment I stopped being a ghost in my own life. It was the moment I realized that I mattered. It was the moment I started to write my own story. And I am proud of that story. It is a story of resilience, of hope, of choosing yourself. It is a story about a woman who refused to be erased. It is my story, and it is not over yet. I am still writing it, one day at a time, one garden at a time, one act of bravery at a time. I am Alara Vance, and I am finally living my own life. And it is beautiful.